It doesn't begin with a sign, it begins with a feeling, a restless one. Something doesn't sit right. You see power consolidating, rules bending, voices silenced, and part of you wants to turn away. But another part, the braver part, stays with it, watches, listens, feels the rising urgency. And then one day you hear a phrase that doesn't just echo, it strikes. No kings. Not a slogan, a line in the sand, a psychological defense mechanism in the form of protest. Because this isn't just about a man or a moment, it's about a mindset, a resistance, not only political, but emotional, cognitive, moral. What drives thousands of people to rally, to march, to chant that a leader has gone too far? What makes ordinary citizens raise their voices when silence would be safer? Beneath the chants there is a deeper story, a psychological rebellion, a refusal not just of a man, but of monarchy, control, manipulation, gaslight. This is the psychology of the No Kings protest, and it's far more personal than you think. Part 1. Collective identity as psychological safety. Human beings do not survive alone, not emotionally, not cognitively, not in protest. The first fuel of any resistance movement isn't rage, it's recognition. You look around and see others who feel what you feel. The relief is palpable. You're not the only one. That's not politics. That's psychological grounding. In isolation, doubt creeps in. Am I overreacting? Am I making this up? But when voices join, doubt evaporates. No Kings isn't just an anti-authoritarian slogan. It's a signal. We still remember what this country is supposed to be. That shared remembering is stabilizing. You feel sane again, seen again. Protest becomes the treatment for emotional gaslighting. This is not trivial. In environments where facts are distorted, institutions challenged, and norms shattered, protesters use community to regain clarity. Because psychological warfare doesn't look like bombs. It looks like confusion, contradiction, chaos. The mind copes with that by reaching for others, by linking arms, literally and metaphorically, with those who still believe. And belief shared and spoken becomes a buffer. You walk together, chant together, dress alike, not for theatre, but for identity armour. In a world fraying at the edges, you need that armour, because no one marches alone. Not really. They march with generations behind them, with values stitched into their memory, with a quiet voice inside that says, "We do not kneel to kings." Part 2. Righteous anger as moral clarity. Anger gets a bad reputation, but when it's righteous, when it's rooted in a violated value, not personal vengeance, anger becomes clarity. You feel it in your chest, a heat, not chaotic, clean. You see injustice, you feel betrayal. But instead of shutting down, you stand up. The No Kings movement didn't rise out of partisanship. It rose out of a moral boundary crossed, a line that should not be blurred. Presidents are not kings, citizens are not subjects. And silence is not neutrality. That's where anger rises, in the gap between what is and what should be. You're not just mad at policies, you're mad at arrogance, at unchecked power, at contempt for rules meant to bind all. And that anger, it doesn't ask for revenge, it asks for restoration. That's the difference between protest and mob. One tears down for power, the other rises up for principle. Here's the psychology. Anger rooted in values feels purposeful. It activates the brain's approach system, moving you towards something. Justice, fairness, accountability. Without righteous anger, the conscience falls asleep. With it, the conscience takes the microphone. It says, "We don't serve kings, we elect presidents." And when they try to reverse that order, we respond. This anger isn't rage, it's love in armour. Part 3. Fear of losing psychological autonomy. Let's go deeper now. The deepest fear driving these protests is not policy. It's not even dictatorship. It's psychological capture. You've seen it before. a nation slowly adjusting to absurdity, to corruption, to cruelty, one tweet at a time, one broken norm at a time, until people no longer know what's real or whether it's worth speaking up. That's the end game of unchecked power, not just control of laws, but control of minds. Here's the psychology of that. When people are flooded with lies, chaos, and threats, they begin to freeze. And when they freeze long enough, they comply. That's why the no king's message matters. It snaps people out of the freeze. It's not about hate, it's about autonomy. Your right to think freely, to feel outrage, to demand better. Authoritarianism doesn't announce itself. It creeps. And by the time it settles in, you've forgotten what normal felt like. That's why protesters flood the streets not just to stop a man, but to stop the psychic erosion of democracy. Because the body knows when something is off, even when the headlines say everything's fine. The No King's protest is a primal scream from the conscience. Don't let comfort seduce you into forgetting your power. Part 4. The myth of the strong man. Let's confront something uncomfortable. There's a reason kings rise. And it's not just ego, it's our longing, our temptation to believe in saviours, in men who promise to fix everything, to be strong for us, to punish them and protect us. That temptation is psychological. We are wired for leaders, but vulnerable to idols. When the world feels unstable, we crave certainty. We trade freedom for order. We say, let him handle it. That's how democracies fall. Not from invasion, but invitation. We invite a king. And then we wonder why the crown never comes off. The No King's protest is not just about resistance. It's about remembrance. It reminds us, power concentrated is power corrupted, even if it wears a familiar face, even if it sounds like strength, even if it tells you what you want to hear. Because democracy isn't about convenience, it's about checks, restraints, accountability. And if that feels messy, good. It means no one gets to play God. The No King's movement confronts not just a man, but a pattern, a cycle that repeats through history: crisis, fear, charisma, collapse. The protesters are the interruption. They say, not again, not here, not while we're awake. Part 5. Psychological courage in a culture of fear. Protesting is not easy. It's vulnerable. You risk being dismissed, ridiculed, punished. But courage is not the absence of fear. It's fear in motion. And right now, courage is contagious. When one person says, I won't be lied to, another says, me neither. When one person says, I remember what this flag used to stand for, another says, I do too. And slowly the silence breaks. The truth is, most people feel something's wrong, but not everyone finds the words or the will. The protesters do. And that expression, that refusal to go numb, is what keeps democracy emotionally awake. Because tyranny doesn't just want your silence, it wants your shrug. It wants you to say, what's the point? And that's when it wins. But when you stand up, even with shaking hands, you remind everyone, the point is everything. This isn't about Donald Trump anymore. This is about how power shapes minds, how the slow drip of chaos, charisma, and conflict can sedate a nation. The No King's protests are a collective act of remembering that democracy is not automatic, that freedom is not passive, that silence is not neutral. These protests are psychological CPR. They wake us up, not with violence, not with vengeance, but with vision. The vision that no man is above the people, that no office becomes a throne, and that no citizen loses their voice without first giving it away. So if you feel the unease, don't numb it. Name it, feel it, channel it, because the protest never ends with the march. It continues in conversation, in culture, in conscience. You are not just protesting a king, you are protecting your mind, your future, your freedom to decide. And that is the most powerful psychology of all.